Hello, my name is Duncan and welcome to this review of World of Tanks. World of Tanks is a massive multiplayer online game in which the player controls a tank and rides it into battle. These battles can be fought over a large amount of different maps and it is mostly played as a game called random battle. This means the player shall be placed in a random battle consisting out of 14 other friendly players and 15 enemies. The goal is to destroy every other tank or to capture their base, defend your own base or capture a central point, depending on what game mode you're playing. Through these battles, depending on how well you play, you gain experience and credits. With this you can research your current and new tanks, and so you can slowly gain new, higher level tanks. With 7 nations, over 200 tanks and 5 different kind of tanks, this probably is the best MMO I have ever played. But now let's move on to the more neutral aspects of the game.
Let's get this show on the road.
First, gameplay. I have divided this in multiple smaller topics, in which the first one are the controls. The controls of the tank are rather easy to learn, not hard at all. WASD is moving your tank around, with the move you can look around, aiming your turret, and with the mouse button you shoot. But also, you can really easily give commands to your friendly units, like that you have to attack, that you need covering fire, that you need help or anything else. And what really determines of how you control is not how easy it is, but how you control your tank during the battle. That's basically the real gameplay, like personally at your tank. It really matters if you place your tank right in front of the enemy, so that it can shoot at you in a 90-degree angle, or if you tilt your tank a little bit. This tilting can gain you a little bit more armor the enemy bullet has to penetrate. Even when we're talking about millimeters here, it can be a really huge difference between penetrating and inflicting damage and just bouncing off and inflicting no damage at all. The controls, in short, are really easy, but how you need to use them can be hard to learn, but when you know how to do it, it's really fun and really handy in the battle. Next to this is how you play the game. This game, World of Tanks, really is a team game. Don't you go on your own, thinking you can just win this battle with your far superior tank, but you will be flanked, you will be killed and you will be obliterated. Nothing will be left of you. You have to communicate with your team. Plan your tank and defense together. That is how you win the game. No other way. This also means that when you lose a flank during the battle, there's a huge chance of your team being cornered when you discover this too late. Even when your battle seems lost, even when you encounter a far superior amount of enemies, the battle is not lost yet. You can still win if you work together, creating a trap for the enemy and destroying them before they even know what happened to them. Also, your HUD shows you everything you have to know. From the location of your friendlies and enemies on your map, to the amount of shells you have left, to the status of your tank. Everything is in your HUD, everything you have to know. This might look like a little bit too much when you first play this game, but you get used to it and eventually you learn how to use it and what you need to look at when you need it. Next on is the leveling. World of Tanks is an MMO, which means there are levels that you can go through. There are a total of 10 tiers of tanks, 10 levels, but this might seem like it isn't a lot, but I've been playing this game for nearly 2 years and I'm only at tier 6. This doesn't mean that I'm a bad player or that it takes a long time for a player to level. I just level multiple tag lines and nations at the same time. If I only played with one nation and one tag line, I could have had a max upgraded tier 10 tank. You gain experience and credits while playing battles. With experience you can research modules for your tank and eventually new and better tanks. With credits you can buy these modules and tanks. And this is how you gain higher tiers of tanks. When you first play this game, you go like to tier 1 to 4 rather easily, rather fast. So in the beginning it looks like there isn't a lot to this game, but when you go into the higher level tiers tanks, you need more and more experience, more and more credits, and that makes you learn how to play the game, how to play with your tank, how to communicate with your team, and how to win. That's really how leveling works. Now the different tanks. There are over 200 different tanks, each with their own heuristics. These tanks are divided over 7 nations, which are Germany, America, the UK, China, Japan, the Soviet Union and France. And each nation has 5 different kinds of tanks. Beginning with artillery. Tank that is pure support. Mostly they place themselves in a corner of the map, hidden as far away as possible and giving only support fire. Their enormous amount of firepower and damage makes them great support. but the long reload time and thin armor makes them also very vulnerable in close range. Next we have the tank destroyer, mostly very small tanks with great front armor and great shell damage. These tanks are very dangerous, but mostly not found on the front line, just as they merely support, picking out the most dangerous tanks and destroying them. These tanks mostly have a stationary turret, which means they can only shoot forwards. The low side and back armors make them very vulnerable from flanking attacks. The light tank is a small, fast and mostly used as scouts. These tanks do little damage, have little armor, but they are incredibly fast and very small. This makes them very hard to hit. They are also used as distractions since they do little damage, but the enemy still sees their hits on their tanks, showing them the threat somewhere behind them or in front of them, wherever your tank is, and distracting them from the larger tanks in front of them. The medium tank do more damage, have heavier armor than light tanks, but they are also larger and slower. These tanks are multi-purpose tanks with balanced characteristics, so it can assume different roles. Performance of the tanks varies from tank to tank, but a wolf pack of medium tanks can be extremely dangerous to everything. The heavy tanks are slow, heavy armored tanks that can inflict a great amount of damage. A single heavy tank can be a great problem on its own. They are mostly used for pushing attacks or denying routes to the enemy force. Even though they are very powerful, they are extremely vulnerable to artillery fire and fast vehicles that can outmaneuver their turrets. As last are the hit locations on the tanks. Each tank has modules that can be destroyed or damaged during battle. This can slower a tank in any way possible, from slower reload time to being stationed on a single location for a couple of seconds. Also, each tank had different armor plates, giving the tank strong, thick armor at certain locations, making them hard to kill, but also thinner, weaker armor at other locations, making them somewhat easier to kill. These different locations is what the game makes so interesting. It isn't simple shooting at the enemy, you really have to think and plan your attacks or you will simply be doomed. All these topics together is why I'm giving a 9 out of 10 for the gameplay. It just is really well thought, really well made, and I just love it. Enemy armor is destroyed. Now about the graphics. This game is beautiful in its highest resolution. There is nearly nothing that is bad about the graphics. Lighting is almost perfect and the textures are nearly photorealistic. But there are a lot of players with computers that do not support these HD graphics. But even if you put the graphics to the lowest, the game looks beautiful. The lighting is mostly gone and textures are not that great, but it is not bad at all. And this is what gives the opportunity for gamers with non-gaming computers to play the game as well. So since it looks beautiful but it also looks good on the low resolution for non-gaming PC players, is why I'm giving the graphics an 8 out of 10. Next is the sound. The background music fits the game and is nearly perfect. It really makes me feel like I'm in the Second World War riding my tank into battle and just shooting enemy tanks. It also creates an urge to ride my tank into battle every time I just start a new battle. Next, also the sound effects are very well made. It really sounds like tanks are already next to me or battles are somewhere further on, and it's almost realistic. Next to it, the crew gives you updates about what happens. You can hear your crew saying things. If you hit a tank, take damage or being hit, they always tell you. So sound is a very important thing in both tanks. And what the most funny thing about there is an option in the settings in which you can say that the crew speaks in the nation language in which the nation is. So Russian tanks will speak Russian and German crew will speak German, which is really funny, I think. The only thing that isn't great about World of Tanks sound effects are the shots from the tanks. Since the first time I played this game I was expecting a great large loud explosion when I fire my shell, but every time this sounds a little bit tough, I think. That's the right word. What helps to fix the problem is to turn up your bass in your sound settings or to buy a headset with a very powerful bass. When you do this, you really nearly feel the explosion of the shell in your head, and that's just amazing. This is why for sound I should give also an 8 out of 10. At last we have the community. The community in World of Tanks is great. You have clans that fight each other, you have special events, and you even have a World of Tanks World League. But the popularity of this game also attracts players that are not good at this game. It doesn't make it a bad thing, they can learn how to play it, but sometimes they really are noobs. They blame everyone else for the mistakes they make and are telling how much the team sucks when they ride into battle alone. This little thing can really affect the gameplay experience for the entire team, and one of these moves stands over to at least 100 good friendly players that help you. And I might hear think these noobs are probably all around the lowest tier tank, but believe me, they're not. They're fucking everywhere. They are in every single tier, mostly with tanks bought with gold, the so-called premium tanks, or they just play through a single tagline understanding their tank and their tank only. This is the only thing that really annoys me in these 2 years that I have played World of Tanks. And that is why I shall give a 6.5 out of 10 for the community. So, putting all these numbers together, the 9 for gameplay, the 8 for graphics, the 8 for sound and a 6.5 for community, it gives World of Tanks an overall score of 7.9 out of 10, which is fairly high. So, World of Tanks is an amazing game and I really recommend it to everybody who wants to try this game.